Are you tired of complex UniFi controller setups, dealing with Mongo databases and advanced configurations? Well, it's time to simplify. Introducing the UniFi controller inside Docker, a simple, streamlined solution that gets you up and running in minutes, not hours. You can forget the headaches, ditch the extra databases, and this container is all you need for a powerful, easy to manage UniFi Docker controller experience. So join me as we dive into how to get started and unleash the full potential of your UniFi network. So we're going to be covering the UniFi Network controller, basically the easy way. I'm going to be showing you how to install this on Windows and Linux with Docker, and how we're going to back up our configurations, how we're going to restore those configurations, and if needed, we'll also go into I'm going to show you the advanced setup anyway, and how to get things working when things just don't seem to want to. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is actually set up the UniFi Network controller on Windows using the official UniFi download executable. To do that, you'll just have to go to ui.com/download, all links will be in the description below, and find the Windows Server executable. Just download this file, chuck in here, yes, we'll overwrite it just for demonstration purposes, and that's downloaded. So we're going to run the installation media for this, and install it this way. I'm going to show a really cool technique for installing this on Linux as well as through Docker. That doesn't require the setup of any databases and things like that, so it's very straightforward as well. But right now, I just want to do the Windows install. And then we're going to go and start the server. Now, bearing in mind, this setup wizard should automatically add your ports to your Windows firewall. If you get to a situation throughout this process where nothing is connecting, nothing is working, then you're going to want to make sure ports 8080, 8443 on TCP inbound are on. And you're also going to want to make sure you've got rules for 3478 UDP inbound on the Windows firewall. Those three ports are a must. So it says that it is started this process, and then we can, now we've got the green tick, just click Manage Server in Browser, which will bring us here. And at this point, you get that option of either starting fresh, which I'm going to do just for purposes of the demonstration, or restoring the server from a backup. And I'm going to show you how we can make sure we do those backups and restores a little bit later on in the video. Right now, I just want to show you from scratch. So what I'm going to do is the server name is going to be UniFi Network Demo. So I know exactly what it is. You set your region to whatever your region is. As the United Kingdom, and obviously once you've read and agreed, crack on. We're going to click next. You get the option of setting up an online account, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to click on advanced setup, and we're going to skip. And that means that everything just stays local to this system. We're then going to, I've got obviously my production UniFi controller credentials available. But what I'm actually going to do is just do a demo for you guys. You put something super secure in here. And will it let me go ahead? No, it's got to have an email in here. And that gets us to our server screen. And then you'll have this blank basically screen. The important thing to make sure we've got right in here is the server IP. This must be the IP address of your machine currently. So if I open the command prompt and I quickly do an IP config, and then I scroll up here, we're looking for this. We're looking for the Ethernet adapter. It's the primary Ethernet adapter that you've got running on your system or your Wi-Fi. It should be Ethernet, but obviously depends what your setup is. And this is running on my 192.168.1.188, and that matches here. I did find that when running this with NordVPN on, especially MeshNet turned on, it was picking up the MeshNet IP address. So therefore, I had to turn off MeshNet during the setup of this process. So just something to be wary about. If you've got a program on your computer, like a VPN or something, you might want to turn that off until you finish this setup. Now, when we're in the main interface, obviously the first thing we're going to want to do is start adopting our access points and various different devices. So you can go ahead and do that at this point by going to UniFi devices. Now, you can see here that these two here are basically saying, you know, you're going to have to reset these because they're configured to use on a different configuration, a different setup that I've previously had, or rather my production setup. Now, I'm going to factory reset one of these because I already have a configuration saved and backed up already, just to show you how you can adopt those devices. So I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to go over to the UniFi device and do the factory reset on it, which I'll show you on a video. On your UniFi access point, you're going to see that little dot, that little circle on the back there, right next to the Ethernet port. And basically, we need to press that in with like a SIM ejection tool or a paperclip or something for about 10 seconds. And that will begin the factory reset process. Now, bearing in mind, once you've done this, you won't be able to connect it to an existing controller without readopting it. It will lose any settings that it has or saved internally. It's literally what it says it is. It's a factory reset. And you will see it blinking there as it begins its factory reset and then gets ready to be readopted. It will then go solid white when it's ready to be adopted in the controller. So as you can see, now I've done that factory reset, it's ready for adoption. So we can literally just click to adopt and it will start adopting that into our network. And it'll start getting things ready. And you'll see that it's now showing up-to-date gigabit uplink connection on that subnet on 192.168.1.1.6. Happy days. Now, it's entirely possible after a restore for this to not function exactly as it should, especially if you're backing up from one OS, restoring on another, which we'll be doing later. But I'll certainly go into that for you. So that's your basic install and getting your device set up and put onto your network. At this point, you can now go down to settings and start creating, you know, a test Wi-Fi. So you could put something like, I don't know, BT. And the good thing, remember, the important thing about Wi-Fi SSIDs is to also make them a bit obfuscated, in the respect that you don't want the person or people around you, around your network that could try and intrude, to know exactly what device they're connecting to. So even though mine's a UniFi device, I actually throw it off and make it look like a BT router. And I'll put something like BT HJK G21 in, just for the... and then obviously you'll just create a super secure password for your network. I do something very secure. Test, 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 da, da, da. Everything else is automatic, and just click add. And then that'll spin up that SSID on the network. So if we just double check, and there it is right there, BT HJKIG21, and that would be obviously the Wi-Fi that you connect to on your devices, which is good. Obviously that gives us our topology. You've got UniFi devices, client devices, things that you can connect to, change a few things. This video's purpose and scope is really not to go deep into the setup and configuration of these devices. It's merely to show you how to install, backup, recover in the most easy, efficient manner. So let's just say we want to back this system up. So let's move it on to backups now. So you'd come down to the bottom left of the screen, your settings. You'd go to System, you'd go to Backups, and you would go to Download. Now at this point, you can choose, if you've got a lot of history built up inside this router, this access point, you can choose at this point how far back you want to go. Now obviously we've just set this up so we can just download the settings of this access point and controller configuration. Because when you back up the controller configuration, which is what we're doing, it'll also back up all of those access points and things like that as well. So it really depends on what you want to do. No limit is the entire history it has on that device. But we're just going to do settings only for now, and we're going to click download. This is going to be the all-important file that you need to keep secure. I'm going to put this in a folder called demo backup. And obviously you put yours wherever you need to as well. That essentially is now the configuration backed up. You've also got the option of setting up a schedule. So you can have this automatically back up, and if you hover over the eye there, it shows you where it's going to actually back up to, which will be in your user directory, under your username, Ubiquity, UniFi, data, backup, auto backup. And then you can set it to monthly, you can click the reschedule button and really get into the nitty-gritty of what you want to do there. It's totally up to you what you want to do. So that's that. Now let's not forget, we can actually do a quick restore while the UniFi controller is already installed. We don't have to do it from scratch. We can literally just hit the restore button in the backup section. So if we do restore and we're in our demo backups, for example, and I go for the most recent one, do you want to restore? Yes, I do. So it restores that backup. So we can go through that now. But something interesting can happen, especially with the access point that we've configured. It doesn't always reconnect the way it should, even from a backup. And then we'll log in. Okay, and as you can see here, it's not seeing any access points, right? So if we go to UniFi devices, we'll see that the access point we had configured earlier on is actually showing us offline and that the device is unreachable. Well, why would that be? I'm not entirely sure. But there are a few things we can do to set this right. So the first thing is what I taught you earlier on, which is go to System, Advanced, scroll down, Inform Host Override 192.168.1.188. It has to be the same IP address as the machine we're installed on. But don't forget, that's already set, so that should be working, but we know it's not. It's offline. So the other thing we can do is actually SSH into the device. Now remember, your SSH username and password will be in System, Advanced, scroll down, it'll be Demo, and the password that it did create for us, right? So if I go to this and I do SSH Demo, because that was the last known username, at 192.168.1.116, and make sure that this is the correct IP address. If you're not getting the option to put a password in, then it's likely the IP address of that access point has changed on your network. But if we just pop in here that password and we enter, and we're now inside, right? So make sure we're putting the right password in and we're inside. So it looks like we didn't even need to go that far. It looks like it actually just needed a couple of minutes to reconnect and set itself back up. But let's just say that was still showing us offline. While we were SSH'd into this device, we could literally right-click, put that command back in, that set inform command, and it's basically telling that access point, no, it is in this location. You need to connect the controller on this machine and this port. And then we would just do that. And then obviously in here it would link back up and connect. But it looks like that actually just needed a few minutes just to set itself back up. Even though it was showing us offline and unreachable, it clearly needed a few minutes just to poll across the network and then connect itself back up. But just to give you a broad base there, that's what we wanted to cover. Let's move on to restoring this from scratch. Now, essentially, the restore process is almost the same as the install process, but at the beginning, obviously, we saw the option to restore. So let's just do that to make sure that everything's working. Now, bear in mind, obviously, I do have one UniFi device that I'm not going to readopt here because this is actually running my production network at the moment. It can't interface with this configuration, this controller, because they're running two separate credential systems. Essentially, every time you back up and restore, you're only going to have access to the devices that were available at the time you backed up. So I'm going to basically launch, I'm going to close this down. Oh. Close this down. Yes. That turns that server off. So if we refresh the page now, it's not going to hit there anymore. I'm going to go to Revo on installer. We're going to uninstall UniFi. No, we're not going to keep the settings because we've already backed them up, but you might want to if you're doing this in a production environment. I'm doing this just for demonstration purposes. To be absolutely certain we've removed every ounce of and trace of this program and its files from the system. We're going to scan the system very quickly, delete everything, firewall rules, any files left over, so they're gone. So at this point, I'm going to run the installer again. We're going to start the server, and as you can see in the background there, the server is starting to bounce up. You're always going to get this. This is always because it has its own self-certified certificate, although you can put your own in if you want to. So that's there. You could either click Manage Server in Browser, or it's waiting for us already, so we'll just get on here. This is going to act like it's brand new, but don't forget, we're going to restore this time. Downloads, demo backup. Here's the backup we made just now. Yes, and it's going to restore all our devices and the configurations that we had on them because we haven't factory reset any of those devices apart from initially earlier to get the process going. So those devices will contain the relevant files and configuration files. Now if we actually bring the server back up here, you can see that it's actually restarting the network server. So that's back up and operational. That'll bring us back to our login page. And obviously if we remember the password, that gets us back in. And then if we go to Unifi devices, we will see straight away that the original Unifi access point that we had set up earlier on is immediately back up and running and is connected to, and it's perfectly fine. We're well aware of the one we're not currently using as my production one. So that's your backup and restore. So you've either watched everything in the Windows install and have now reached the Linux install, or you've just skipped straight to this section. In either case, you're in the right place if you're looking for the UniFi controller to be deployed on Linux using Docker. Now, I was pulling my hair out trying to get this to work with various other containers, such as Linux server container for the UniFi controller. It wanted Mongo databases, it wanted this setup, that setup. I'm one of those people, I might not be a noob, but I just like straightforward deployment. I don't want to mess around where I don't need to. And there are many containers out there where you need to set up databases for. I gave it a shot, and even I struggled to get that Mongo database working, and it was just hell on earth. But this doesn't require any such advanced configuration. This is a repository by Jacob Alberti, the UniFi Docker repository by him. He has stuffed all this into a container for us that just needs to be deployed, and it just works. It's magic. It's lovely, and I really appreciate the work and effort he's put into this, going as far as to keep this maintained and updated. I just hope he knows just exactly what he's doing there for everyone, and everyone's appreciative of that fact. So when you and these links will all be in the description below as always. When you do get onto this repository, please give it a star, just to show your appreciation, really. So essentially, you've got a few options with this. It does come with a built-in Docker Compose file if you want to really get into the nitty-gritty, and it's got a lot of stuff in here that you can mess around with. Personally, I'm not going to go that route. It does come with a Docker run command, which you can just copy and paste, edit it for your needs, obviously, including what directory you want to store this in and your time zone. But what I've done is I've just converted the run command into a Docker Compose file. And essentially it just goes like this. If I click edit here, I'm using Dockage, by the way, which is an alternative to Portainer. If you don't know what that is, it literally just helps you manage and create and store your Compose files and stacks and env files and things like that. I've got a link in the description below if you'd like to check out that video. Really good watch. In fact, I think that was my first video I put on this channel, or close to. But essentially, this is the Compose file that I've created from that run command, and it works flawlessly. You got Jacob Alberti as the image. The container name is UniFi. It has a built-in user here called UniFi. We're not going to change that. That's going to remain the same. It's got restart unless stopped, and then you've got the following ports set up. 8080 for obviously your devices to find and be adopted through the HTTP port. You've got 8443, which you'll use to access the user interface. Has its own self-signed certificate. You can change that if you want to. And then you've got the stun port number, which is 3478. All these ports are required, so make sure they are there. If you find this is not spinning up for any reason, it's highly likely that you are running things on these ports. You can change them on the left-hand side, and then use the advanced technique I'll show you later to set the inform host. But I would strongly recommend you do your best to just try and use these ports and change other ports of other programs if needed. We've got two volumes I'm setting up here. The first one is for the UniFi folder in the container. This is basically the equivalent of a configuration folder. This is on my home, Kflix, my apps, UniFi. And then I've also got a backup place where I can easily access all the backups that I schedule within the container as well in the controller. You set your time zone up, your environment, and then we are going to be using the network mode host, which will give it the best chance of success. So that's absolutely fine there. No additional networks need to be configured there. You don't need that at the bottom. That's just what Dockage puts in when you don't specify a container. So when that is all set up like that, and again, this Compose file I've already got in my online repository on GitHub. I will link in the description below. We're just going to go and hit deploy. Essentially what this does is it obviously it says your published ports are discarded because we're putting it in network host mode, so technically the ports are irrelevant because it will just use those anyway. But yeah, you might get this warning in here, unable to load properties from said file. Don't worry about it, that's absolutely fine. It'll still boot up and work. Now you do need to give this a few minutes, and then once that's ready, it'll actually pop up on here. If you are getting a bad request such as this, you just need to go to the top URL and do HTTP and add the S. You'll then get the connection is not private because it's using a self-signed certificate, but you can just proceed after clicking advanced. And that gets us in to set up our network. And at this point, you get that option of either starting fresh, which I'm going to do just for purposes of the demonstration, or restoring the server from a backup. And I'm going to show you how we can make sure we do those backups and restores a little bit later on in the video. Right now, I just want to show you from scratch. So what I'm going to do is the server name is going to be UniFi Network Demo. So I know exactly what it is. You set your region to whatever your region is. As long as United Kingdom. And obviously, once you've read and agreed, crack on. We're going to click next. You get the option of setting up an online account, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to click on Advanced Setup, and we're going to skip. And that means that everything just stays local to this system. We're then going to, I've got obviously my production UniFi Controller credentials available. But what I'm actually going to do is just do a demo for you guys. You put something super secure in here. And will it let me go ahead? No, it's got to have an email in here. Okay, so this is now UniFi network application successfully running on Docker. Now, one of the first things that you want to do here is go to the settings, go to system, go to advanced. You want to scroll down to where it says inform host, and then check the override box, click confirm. Now, the override destination needs to be the IP address of the system running this network controller. In my case, that's 192.168.159. Click apply changes. And then what we're going to do is go back to Dockage or however you launched your compose, and we're going to restart this container. Simple as that. What this does is it basically tells all your Ubiquity devices to connect to this IP address when looking for the network controller. Now, it's not 100%. It doesn't always work, but it does give a fair chance, especially when running the network application inside a Docker container. And the reason for that is because Docker isolates networks in the containers. That's part of the reason, well, that's part of the thing that Docker does. It's why it's good at isolating those environments. So we're just doing that to give it a fair chance of finding those. But I'm going to show you another trick to get these things working if it doesn't. So that should be now restarted successfully. So I'm going to refresh this page. And I'm actually reverse proxying this through Nginx Proxy Manager as well, which you can check out a video in the description. So we're going to chuck in my demo user credentials right now. And then we're going to go over to UniFi devices on the left. Now, as you can see, there is absolutely nothing here. Now, if you're seeing anything here, perfectly great. You can start adopting them. Now, again, we have started this from scratch. So if you can't adopt one of your UniFi access points, for example, it is likely that you haven't factory reset that UniFi device. And you need to do that and able to use that on a from scratch UniFi network controller. You can't kind of take access points or other devices that have already been connected up to a controller somewhere else. Even if it's inside your network, the controllers are very unique, so you can't just switch and swap them about like that. If you find that that's the case, you either need to do a restore from a backup you've had, which you could have done at the beginning if you wanted to, like I mentioned, or if you're only just finding this out now for whatever reason, you could actually go to System, Backups, and Restore here. And then you can restore from one of your configuration backups. And if you're restoring it from a configuration that those access points originally worked on, then they will start working again on here. But just remember, after your restore, if you hadn't already set the inform host, which we just did, you might want to go and do that as well. It's just because of running in Docker. Now, I do have a device connected up to the network on here, but it's not seeing it. That's because, as I mentioned earlier, it is connected to an old inform host on a different controller. I'm going to plug in a new access point right now to see if it actually finds it. And if it doesn't, which I suspect it won't, just because of the type of networking isolation, I'll show you exactly how we can adopt those devices. Okay, so I've connected up my UniFi access point, the UniFi Lite, and it's still not actually seeing this. So I'm going to give it 1 or 2 more minutes and see if it picks it up. If it doesn't, I'm going to show you that trick. Okay, so it's been on the network a little while, and we're actually still not seeing that access point, and it's showing a solid white light. So it is telling me it is ready to adopt, and I know it's on my network. So what I'm going to do is you need to identify the IP address of that device. Now, I use a Firewall Gold SE, which is my firewall router combo. You might use just a standard internet service provider router, or you might have a custom solution. In any case, we need to figure out the IP address of that device. So you need to go through your network and find all the devices listed in your router and then identify the right one. Now, it might come up as UniFi Access Point. It might even come up as unknown. So bear that in mind. But you do need to find it. So, and if you're going through your network and you can't find it, maybe just unplug the access point, see what device dropped off, make the difference, and then come back and have another look. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here and find that in my devices. Okay, so I've just identified the device is showing as unknown, but it's actually showing us on the wrong subnet. It's actually showing an IP address of 192.168.2.82, and that's on my guest VLAN. So basically, the switch I've connected this to, I haven't configured the VLAN correctly. So I'm just going to look into that now, and then hopefully we'll get this on a 192.168.1. So it's on the same subnet as this controller. Here's my problem. So on the KL6, you can see I've got it as untagged. But it's still being a member of VLAN ID 6, and that's my issue there. So I need to put this as not a member. Okay, now that's done, I'm going to unplug the access point, plug it back in, and hopefully we'll see it. Otherwise, we'll try that trick out. Okay, and as we can see, after several attempts, that's still not connecting. So let's just double check the firewall. Okay, and as you can see, we found the router. It's actually coming up as unknown, and it's now got the correct subnet of 192.168.1.116. So what we're going to do is we're going to SSH into that via the terminal. So whatever operating system you're using, whatever you're installing this on, get to your terminal. I'm using PowerShell here on Windows, despite the fact that I'm running the controller on Docker on my Ubuntu server. I'm viewing this through my Windows Razer laptop. So I'm going to do SSH. And we're going to, at default, it should be ubnt at the IP address over here that we identified on our router. So that's 192.168.1.116. Password is being asked, great sign, and the password is going to be the same as the username, ubnt. Just as a quick side note here, after we've successfully adopted this access point, the username and password will change to these in the settings of your network controller. So you go to Settings, System Advanced, and then scroll down till you see the device authentication credentials, and you can click the little eye next to the password to actually see what the password is, and it will generate its own brand new password. So if you ever SSH into this in the future and it's not factory reset, it'll be using these credentials, so it might be worth saving them. Just a little caveat I thought I'd mention. And now we're inside. Now if we do info, we can see that it is unable to resolve, and you can see it's actually not even looking for our controller in the right place. It's actually looking for it at the directory UniFi. Sorry, at the domain UniFi. And it's literally just UniFi. There's no dot afterwards. It's literally just UniFi looking on port 8080 to do that. Now, there's several ways we can go about doing this. We could go into our router and set up a redirect. So on Firewaller, this will be also known as DNS rewrites if you're using AdGuard or Pi-hole, things like that. But if we go to services, if we add a custom rule basically under services in the Firewall Gold, we can set a domain up, and the domain would literally be UniFi, and we'd leave it like that because that's what it's looking for down here. And then what we do is we'd resolve that to 192.168.1.116, like we saw earlier on. And that, when it's done, after a few minutes, would mean that anything looking such as this access point for UniFi would be directed to that IP address instead of searching the rest of the network or outside. So you can do that. That's one way. That's a DNS rewrite. Another simple method to do this, which is straightforward on the router here. Sorry, on the SSH terminal here. The other way of doing this on here is to use the setinform command. So like we did the inform command on the controller, we can actually mirror this onto the access point. And all you do is put this command in, which I'll leave in the description below for you. And it's literally set-inform space http:// the IP address of the machine that the controller is running on, its port number, which is 8080, /inform. And what this command will actually do is it will force the access point to connect to a controller on that directory. Sorry, I keep saying directory, on that IP address, on that domain there. If you do this and we click enter, you should not long afterwards, or immediately as you can see, have it pop up in the controller. And that's basically, absolutely, without a doubt, forcing it there. And if you have a controller running on there and you have the ports open, it will immediately show that. So again, you've got the DNS rewrite route, or you can just simply do it yourself. And you can do this for every device you want to connect to. Sometimes after doing the first one, all preceding access points and devices, for some reason, do connect to it that way. Not always, but sometimes. I've had a hit and miss arrangement with that. But as you can see, it's now ready to adopt, and we can literally just click adopt. And it will start that cycle up. Getting it ready, and then at that point, you can then configure it, add it to your network, do whatever you want with it. So that's pretty much as good as it gets. And as you can see, it's up to date. It's got a gigabit uplink because it's using my gigabit PoE switch from TP-Link. Got a link in the description for that as well if you're after that. And yeah, so the UniFi Access Point AC Lite is now up and connected, as you can see. And you can start messing around with the settings. It's fully available there. And obviously, if you go into settings and then Wi-Fi, you can now create your first Wi-Fi network. So you can put anything you want in there. I'd recommend using something a bit obfuscated, something like, I don't know, like a BT router and you know, something like that. You never want to identify the access point and what it is, so people that may be hacking into it might think it's a BT router and will therefore use BT routing hacks to get into it, not unify things. Set a password and all the other settings, and then you can get into the nitty-gritty of creating up your networks and VLANs and things like that. But I hope that's given you a nice oversight of, you know, getting access to the access points, especially when they're not showing, because there's nothing more annoying than going through all the setup process, getting everything working as far as you believe it to be, and then it just doesn't show. It gets quite frustrating, and you're tearing your head out. The next step is obviously, like I did on Windows, is basically showing you how to do your system backups. So I'm just going to do backup here. You go to Settings, System, Backups, and then you can just click Download. Now you can just either do the settings, the last 7 days, whatever you're into. Click download, and then it'll start fetching that download, and then you can put it in here. You know, and the cool thing is it actually tags on the end the version number of the software that you're running as well, which is really cool. And you can add something on yourself if you want to. I'm going to just put demo, and that's there as well. You can set a schedule up, and the reason why in the compose file I've created that second one there for the backup is so that on the left-hand side of the colon you can specify a location on your server where you want those backups to go when they're scheduled. So literally, currently it's set to monthly, but we can set it to weekly. You can change the days, times, everything on there, and get that going and working in your setup. So I really hope that's been of help to you. I know the video's been a little bit long, so that's why I kind of split it into Windows and Linux, so that you could just skip ahead if you needed to. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I can't wait to get the next one out. Please keep commenting on videos that you want to see on the channel. I've got a long list of things that people have asked for, and I'm doing my best to work through those. So thank you very much. If you've requested something and I've commented back to say, yes, I'll be working on it, rest assured, I am working on it. There's just a long list of things to do. Subscribe, like, and share the content. And as always, thanks for watching.